out with 4 hours of classroom instruction, and that was a little tough because I was ready to be out there. I was ready to be in the city. I was ready to get going, get moving. And then once we actually did get out there, 10 minutes later, I was ready to turn back, get in the cool fan. And there's a reason why in the Bible you never read about the Israelites worshiping a sun god, and that's because the sun is very mean to them over here. It's not something that you really want to worship because it's a bully. I have never experienced such hot sun in all my life, and I'm from Texas. Now it's not a humid heat; it's a dry heat. But that's the problem of it, is that with humidity, you feel your face melting, and then your shirt's like you just went swimming in a water milkshake, and so oh, it's hot. I need to go do something else. And decide, drink a lot of ice water, maybe go sit in a bathtub full of ice. Whereas here in Israel, you think, oh yeah, I've got this, then bam! Out of nowhere, you're on the ground frying like an egg. It just suddenly hits you. And then you think, well, maybe I'll drink this water that I brought with me, but wham! It's as hot as Satan's spit. I don't know, it's just really hot over here. I guess that's what deserts are like. I wonder if that's what West Texas is like, actually. Good question to explore. So, really hot. And like I said, we walked around for 4.5 hours. And what we didn't actually really go into the city per se so much. We mostly stayed kind of on the outskirts, and we were traveling along the wall. If you know anything about Jerusalem at all, there is, of course, a wall that surrounds the city, which was common for a lot of cities in the ancient times, like in the Old Testament. They were kind of like forts and whatnot. So we're walking around the wall and looking at how different bricks were from different periods, such as these bricks are from the Hasmoneans, and these bricks are from the Ottoman Empire, and these bricks are from the Herodians. And then we can see where, this is where this wall, the southern wall, meets the northern wall, and it merges together. Here's where this wall then turns into this type of wall instead. Or here's where this wall was, started to be torn down by some people who wanted parts of this wall, and so these people from other nations came and put other things in this wall to kind of make it better. So we mostly scaled the walls, but I did get some really good pictures along the way. They're not all of the wall, don't worry, there's some other ones in there. But a couple of interesting things to note. Let me get my notes up here so I make sure I tell you correct information. Apparently like 90% of the things I say in life are just wrong. So a little about Jerusalem. One of the things is that it's actually 33 miles east of the Mediterranean, which is really nice because in the midst of this hot desert murderous sun, every once in a while you feel this really cool Mediterranean breeze come through, and it is incredible. Like, it just feels as if angels are singing to you. And then, the sun comes back. But it's the Mediterranean breeze is very, very nice. And then, of course, Jerusalem is 15 miles west of Jordan, to kind of put that into perspective. So it's very close to the Dead Sea. And then what's interesting is that you would think that Jerusalem would be part of the tribe of Judah, would be in that territory, since, of course, that, everyone knows that if you read the books of Kings and the Chronicles, whenever Israel split into the two kingdoms, you had the Israel in the north with 10 of the tribes, and then in the south you had Judah and Benjamin, and of course the capital of Judah, which was the southern kingdom, was known as Jerusalem. So you would think, logically, that it would follow that Jerusalem would be in Judah. However, within geographical boundaries, Jerusalem actually falls within the bounds of Benjamin. But it's a very, very close line. I'm sorry. I'm right. Excuse me. Yes, it's in my notes, Benjamin. But it's a very, very close line. And then also, Jerusalem is in the mountains. Now, granted, it's not like a legitimate Mount Everest, like I said, but it is a very high altitude, and it is considered to be in the mountains. And so that's why in the Bible, when you read that Jesus went up to Jerusalem, literally, he went up. It's a mountain. He climbed. I climbed that climb. It's not. You notice that it's a climb. It definitely feels like you're hiking a mountain. So we then went into talking about some of the factors that go into founding a city, and we talked about some of the history behind Jerusalem, such as the population and square mileage density of the actual city since its founding, or since our historical records go back, and we looked at how it increased in population. Then, once the exile happened, of course, it decreased, and then after the exile, they came back and slowly built up again. And so we evaluated that, but I won't go really into that. And then we looked at a couple of geographical features, such as the three valleys that are in Jerusalem. And so you have the Central Valley. That's kind of the most boring of them. Not a whole lot really happens in the Central Valley. Then you have the Kidron Valley. Slightly more interesting. I think that's one that actually connects with the city of David. We're not going to the city of David until tomorrow, and so I'll actually have more information on that one tomorrow. And then my favorite is the Hinnom Valley. And this is the one that the school is right next to. Since we're kind of on this mountain, there's this valley that's in between us and the actual city of Jerusalem. And one of the interesting things that Dr. Laney told us about the Hinnom Valley was that it was actually considered evil in ancient times. Part of the reason is because Ahaz and Manasseh built altars there and actually offered child sacrifices. And so that was really interesting, and that was good to know. I mean, obviously it's not, but it was good to know. You know, I like the Hinnom Valley. That's got a good story behind it. Then we also noticed a couple of mounts and mountainous hill type geographical features. And so we talked about the Mount Zion in the city of David, which is the original Mount Zion was the city of David. But then over time, Mount Zion came to be known as all of Jerusalem, even though it was really supposed to be the city of David, which is the small section that, like I said, I'll go more into tomorrow, and I'll have better pictures of that and whatnot. And what happened with that is that there was a Jebusite fortress that David actually captured and turned into his own capital, and that's how it became known as the city of David, also Mount Zion. Then we also looked out at Mount Moriah, which is, if you read back to Genesis, Mount Moriah is where Yahweh told Abraham to bring Isaac to offer him as a sacrifice, but then didn't and offered a ram instead. Now, what's interesting about this, and I actually never really made this connection, bad Old Testament scholar, the chronicler, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, actually notes that this, on Mount Moriah, where Abraham took Isaac to be sacrificed, this is actually where Solomon built his temple. I was so unaware of that. I thought it was just some obscure location. Here's a high place. Let's put some temples here. So, yes, that's actually a thing. Very consistent. Now, currently, the temple is obviously no longer there. It got destroyed once in 586 BC. Then they rebuilt it, but then it got destroyed again by the Romans in 70 CE. Or 70 AD. So, currently, there's the foundation there. And we'll be going more in depth in this, I think, tomorrow or the next day. But right now, it's currently home to the Dome of the Rock that's built on the foundational platform of the temple. And so whenever Jesus says that not a stone shall be left of the temple, whenever he makes that prophecy, it's actually true that there are no stones of the temple that are left on that foundation. The foundation itself is not part of the temple, and so the fact that that's still there doesn't really count. But all the stones were literally pushed off the side of the foundation. And then there's this Dome of the Rock that was placed there and built instead. And then, of course, we saw the Mount of Olives. And the Mount of Olives isn't one single mountainous type hill. It's rather this kind of ridge or this range. And I did get a picture or two of that I think are somewhat decent. And of course, this is the mount that David ascends in order to flee from Absalom. And so that was, I thought, some really interesting points of information regarding some geography of Jerusalem. Now, a couple of the places we went to, we actually had a fairly full schedule. And let me tell you, at the end of the 4.5 hours of walking and hiking, I gotta say, Dr. Laney gave like the most soul-crushing sentence I've ever heard in my life. So, walking for 4.5 hours, I really haven't walked this much since I was in Italy 3 years ago. And I'm thinking that we walked like 40 miles, because I'm near death. I'm barely dragging myself along. I've got my backpack on my back, my hat's on my head, and I just feel myself hunching over and crippling more and more with each and every step, struggling just to stay alive and defeat the forces of evil that are waging against me, calling me down to the depths of doom. And And I'm proud of myself for surviving all this until he says, yeah, I think we walked about a good 3 miles today. 3 miles? Really? I nearly died over 3 miles. Turns out it wasn't really 3 miles. We looked it up later. It was more like 5.7, which will round up to 6. More like 6 miles, which is double. I'll accept that. So, I nearly died over 6 miles. I feel much better about saying that.